Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to day 25 of ICZ Ramadan program. I now invite Maulana Sayyid Hadi Yasin to give us a lecture on Ahkam of Ramadan as usual.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة لأعدائهم أجمعين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Following the ahkam of fastings and the ahkam of Ramadan, regarding the niyat of fasting of month of Ramadan, we mentioned that the time for the niyat of fasting for someone who is alive, who is conscious and understands, is before azan as-subh, fajr prayer. So before there, then he or she should have the niyat that I'm going to fast today with the niyat of Ramadan. And we mentioned the niyat is not just mentioning or reviewing. As long as I know that I'm going to fast today, or as long as I wake up for suhoor and I know this is my intention, that's good for the fasting. But if someone was asleep before the azan of Fajr of Ramadan and wakes up before the Zohr, azan is Zohr and Zohr prayer, then if he or she didn't do, of course, anything to make it batil, they can do the niyat of Ramadan and they can continue fasting. If someone had the niyat of Ramadan before the Fajr prayer, right? And wakes up after Zuhr, that's fine. As long as he or she has the niyat before the azan that I'm going to fast. But if someone didn't have the niyyah and wakes up after Zuhr in Ramadan, the niyat of Ramadan, this person should continue fasting that day and after Ramadan do the qaza of that. There are two other sections and possibilities, situations. Waqt and the time of niyat of fasting that is wajib, mu'ayyan, but it's not Ramadan. What that means? That means the fasting is wajib because, for example, Nazr. And the day is mushakhas and is very mu'ayyan, and it's specifically he or she made the Nazr, for example, that next week, Wednesday, or the beginning of, for example, Sha'ban, I'm going to fast. So it was specifically clear what day and when, and it's wajib because it's through the Nazr. He did the Sighay Nazr, but it's not Ramadan. In this case, غير as not the Ruzay Ramadan, but it's wajib, such as Nazr. If that person doesn't have the niyat of fasting purposely and amdan before the subh, before the Fajr prayer, for the Fajr prayer, the fasting of that day is batil. So what happens? So before the Fajr, he has to have the niyat of the fasting. But if he or she didn't know that the fasting is wajib today, or forgot that today is fasting and is wajib for him or her, and before the Zuhr remembers, oh my God, today is the first of Sha'ban, I was supposed to fast. If he or she didn't do anything to make the fast batil, didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't do anything to make the fast batil, and has the niyyah, the fasting of that day is correct. So what happened? Forgot, not purposely. He forgot that today was the wajib fasting for him or her, and then they didn't do anything, remembers before the azan zuhr, and didn't do anything to make the fasting batil. This fasting of that day is correct. If he just quickly have the niyyat, the fasting is correct. There's no issue with that. But if he remembers after zuhr, so he forgot about today is the wajib day for me to fast, what happened? And then after Zuhr remembers that, today is the first of Sha'ban and I had the Nazr of today to make it and made it wajib for myself. Ihtiyat wajib is that this person continue fasting the whole day, and then after Ramadan have the niyat of qaza of that day and do the qaza as well, because it's after Zuhr. So I'm going to recap again to understand what we talked about. So we're talking about the Ruzayya Ramazan, Ruzayya Ghayr Ramazan, not the Ramadan fasting. We talked about the niyat of Ramadan, right? Not the Ramadan fasting. But it's wajib and it's mu'ayyan. I know I made it wajib for myself, such as Nazr, and I made it specifically for certain day. For example, the first of Rajab, because of my Nazr, I made it wajib, qurbatan Allah lillahi alayya. is wajib for me. In that case, before the azan stop, should have the niyyah. If forgot about it before Zohr and didn't do anything, they have to do the niyyat and anything to make about have the niyyah and fast that day. But if after Ramadan remembers, continue imsak of that day, and after Ramadan do the qaza, inshallah. We'll continue, inshallah, tomorrow about the next section. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our prayers, our a'mal, our dua, inshallah, and let us be closer to Allah and to Himself with the barakat of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salawat.
Jazakallah Maulana for enlightening us Ahkam of Ramadan. We have Shaikh Amin Rastani rest of the Ramadan. Before I invite him, I would like you guys to please recite Surah Fatiha 1 time and 3 times Surah Ikhlas for all Marumin. Include those for whom there is no one to recite Fatiha, and your own Marumin and those whom names are on Monument of Zahra. I now invite Maulana Shaikh Amin Rastani to address us, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أما بعد، فإن الله سبحانه وتعالى خلق الخلق حين خلقهم غنيا عن طاعتهم آمنا من معصيتهم، لأنه لا تضره معصية من عصاه ولا تنفعه طاعة من أطاعه. Last night we began our series on the 193rd khutbah of Nahj al-Balagha, in which Imam Ali alayhi salam, he describes the muttaqeen. Quick recap of a couple of the more important points that were covered last night. Number one is that there's a big connection, you can say, between the month of Ramadan and taqwa, and between taqwa and this khutbah. And so taqwa is what links this khutbah that we're covering to the month of Ramadan as well. This khutbah is not only for the month of Ramadan, but it can really come, one can relate to it in this holy month more because of the taqwa that we inshallah gain in this month. We talked about that a little bit. We talked about how taqwa can have different definitions and equivalents. Some call it God wariness, some call it God consciousness or being God conscious. Some will use the word piety. But we said at the end of the day, we don't want to get into these semantics. We want to see what is it all about. And the active ingredient of taqwa is obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it comes to especially the wajib and haram of Allah. We talked about that a little bit as well. Then we said, let's talk about this khutbah now. This khutbah, if that's the definition of taqwa for us, this khutbah that begins listing the characteristics and the practices of the muttaqeen, when we look at it, we find that there's a lot of things in there that are not about wajib and haram. They're more than that. They're either mustahabbat or other things. They're talking about higher levels of iman in these individuals. And so the question was, that contradicts our definition of taqwa. On one hand, the Imam is doing a tawsif lil muttaqeen. He is describing and painting a picture for us of the muttaqeen. On the other hand, we said taqwa is what it's all about, really is obedience of God, and obedience really has to do with the wajib and haram of Allah and obeying Him in those commands. So if that is wajib and haram, but on this side we find mustahabbat, lots of other things, extra things that the Imam is speaking about in the khutbah, then we need to reconcile these two, because these two kind of are going against each other. The answer was, and we covered this yesterday as well, the last thing we covered yesterday was this, that taqwa, yes, the foundation of it is obedience of God when it comes to the wajib and haram, and that is something that we cannot take lightly at all. But at the same time, a person who continues this wajib and haram observance, inshallah, reaches a point where Allah puts a love in their heart, a longing in their heart for more closeness to Him, and so on. And so they will try to do other things as well that aren't even wajib. But we do have to get this right, brothers and sisters. A person who has not reached a point where they're just not sinning too much anymore, if a person has not reached that point, then the mustahabbat are probably not going to have the desired effect. Sometimes you want to get sawab for something, you want to get rewards for something. Okay, you go for ziyarah, for example, of Imam al-Rida alayhi salatu wassalam, and the hadith says you get this many rewards. Sometimes though, when you go, you're like sinning along the way, coming back, maybe even, sins might happen. Well, does that mean that you lose all the rewards of that ziyarah? Not necessarily. So you are getting sawab, inshallah, but the desired effect of some of the mustahabbat won't take place properly because a person is not observing the wajib and haram of Allah, right? So for example, in the story of Habil and Qabil, those two sons of Prophet Adam alayhi salam, Qabil kills Habil because Habil's sacrifice to God is accepted, Qabil's is not. And so he kills them out of jealousy. But now this is the part that's important. The Quran quotes them here and quotes Habil here because Habil makes an accurate statement. Habil tells Qabil before Qabil kills him, he says, you want to know why my sacrifice was accepted, yours wasn't? He says, Inna Allaha innama yataqabbalullahu min al-muttaqin. Allah only and only accepts from those who have taqwa. You can't expect to have a sloppy taqwa throughout the day and then expect Allah to accept your mustahab acts, for example. This is something that it's a rule. You hear ulama of akhlaq say this. They say, look, before making sure that you've reached a point, an acceptable, reasonable point where your sinning is at a minimum, yes, don't think that the mustahabbat will have that desired effect of higher faith, spirituality. You might get a good feeling, but after a little bit, it'll go away. If you want it to persist, you want it to be that you have to have something on the side, which is taqwa. If I want to, I don't know, let's say, I don't want to give examples, do a mustahab act. I want to recite a salawat and I want Allah to accept it. In other words, not just give me sawab for it, but also lift me spiritually. Then I have to, next to that salawat, I have to have taqwa throughout the day. And that will be accepted. That will be accepted. And once it's accepted, you don't have to worry about anything else. Imam Ali in Nahj al-Balagha, somewhere else, he says this. He says, لا يقل عمل مع التقوى. That no good act is small and insignificant if it's with taqwa. وَكَيْفَ يَقِلُّ مَا يُتَقَبَّلُ. And how can it be small, that which is accepted? Look at that. You're doing something big, which is observing Allah's wajib and haram throughout the day. All right, when you're doing that, that itself is making Allah very happy with you and pleased with you. So here, if I do one salawat, it might do more for me, spiritually speaking, than if I was to sin and stuff, but then sponsor a $1,500 majlis, for example. It would do more for me than maybe, waking up in the middle of night even and doing some namaz. Yeah, it might. I don't have the measuring stick, brothers and sisters, and I'm not someone to judge. That's Allah's job. But when you sit down in the presence of these great ulama, this is what they tell you. They say, hey, they won't word it like this, but you can tell that this is what it's all about. They've walked the walk. They know the path. And they tell you, look, if you want the desired effect of mustahabbat to take place, you have to take care of your wajib and haram first. It's a priority. Now, having said all of that, this hadith here, this khutbah of Nahj al-Balagha, True, it speaks about more than just the wajibat and harams. Yes, true. But it's not in conflict with our understanding of this concept of taqwa, which means to not disobey God when it comes to his wajib and haram. Why? It doesn't go against it because if a person, this is an important line I want you to remember, if a person continues that foundational basic observation of or observance of the wajib and haram of Allah, slowly and gradually their iman gets stronger and stronger and stronger. I don't have time to explain this, why this is the case. I'm just quoting ulama of akhlaq here. As a result of practically obeying God day in and day out, and if you commit a sin, doing tawbah right away, trying your best not to repeat it, as a result of all of this, one's iman gets stronger and stronger and stronger. When a person's iman gets stronger and stronger and stronger, they can't help but to shoot for the stars. And so in this khutbah, you'll find that these muttaqeen who continued their taqwa, what pinnacles they reach. And so these are not against each other. I'll give you an example and I will move on. A person who has been working out in the gym for 5 months, let's say, versus a person who works out at the gym it's been 10 years since he's been working out. He started working out when he was like 20 years old, now he's 30 years old. And he's in the gym still working out for the past 10 years, right? Now, in this case, what do we say? We say this guy A and B. A works out, B also works out, but there's a big difference between the two. A works out, but is only benching 60, 70 pounds. B is working out, is also working out, but he can bench 200, right? He can bench 200. Oh, then someone will say, but these are contradicting. How can you work out? Both of them are working out, but one is better than the other. Well, one has continued it more, and that's why they are reaping the results of it and the fruits of it more. Here also, Khutbatul Muttaqeen is speaking about that higher grade. Those who've continued the wajib and haram observance for years and years of their life, and they want more now. They have more love in their hearts of God. And that's the pinnacle that they reach. Inshallah, it's clear. And so the Imam here, he wants to begin the khutbah by explaining these muttaqeen, what they're like. But before he begins to list their characteristics, the Imam, he does one thing. He gives like a 2 or 3 line introduction first. A little explanation, yes, to get us ready for what he's about to say. Yes? So he says, أما بعد فإن الله سبحانه وتعالى خلق الخلق حين خلقهم غنيا عن طاعتهم. He says, listen, you want me to talk about the muttaqeen, what they're all about, what they look like? Let me tell you this first. Allah created all of creation when He created it, while He was not in need of at all and free of the obedience of His creation. Yes, He didn't need their creation, their obedience when He created them. Aminan min ma'siyatihim, safe from their disobedience. It's not like when we disobey God, we hurt His feelings or something, or like He loses something as a result. No, none of that. It's all for ourselves, brothers and sisters. At the end of the day, it's all for our own benefit. It's out of His grace that He's created us and given us the opportunity to soar at heights of spirituality, to inshallah maybe even surpass the angels. Yes? Now, why is he saying all of this? Because he's going to talk about the muttaqeen, right? And how obedient they are to God, to the extent that they obey Him in the wajib and haram plus more. They know Allah likes this too, they do that as well. They know Allah might dislike this, they stay away from it. Even though it's not haram, but they'll stay away from it. That's for them though, of course. A person like me still has to take care of the wajib and haram, remember that. But we're going through this as motivation, especially in this holy month. That this is the goal. Maybe when I'm 60, 70 years old, I'll reach this. I'm going to start working now. Yes, I'm going to start working out so I can look like this in 60, 70 years, just like the guy who starts working out, and says 10 years from now, this is what I want to look like. Yes? Because he knows if he starts 1 year before that, he's not going to get there. 10 years before, it's an investment. I know some of you who are watching probably, you work out and you've told me about that. So that's why I'm using this example a lot. I don't know, inshallah, you're watching, you know who you are. Anyway, a person who reads a khutbah of muttaqin like this won't get to this overnight, but they'll understand that it's not accomplished overnight, and so they will start working on themselves from now, so that when they're 60 years old, they're still not chasing after sneaker collections, and rather they are actually working more and more towards their akhirah, and they've reached a high level of taqwa, of closeness to Allah. So here, the Imam, when he's telling us all of these things, he wants to make one thing clear first. He says, look, these muttaqin that are so good in their obedience of God, remember this: Allah is not in need of their obedience. Let's get that straight. That's like what the Imam is saying right now. Let's get this straight. Imam is telling us Allah doesn't need it. So this is all for yourselves, right? He wants that for ourselves. This is like a childish way to look at it, that Allah gets upset when we disobey Him, or He gets happy. He gains something. No. So it goes on. It says, لِأَنَّهُ لَا تَضُرُّهُ مَعْصِيَةُ مَنْ عَصَاهُ وَلَا تَنْفَعُهُ طَاعَةُ مَنْ أَطَاعَهُ. It says, because when we disobey Him, or the ones who disobey Him, it's not like it hurts Him in any way, harms Him in any way. وَلَا تَنْفَعُهُ طَاعَةُ مَنْ أَطَاعَهُ. And that obedience that some do doesn't benefit him. He doesn't gain anything or lose anything. All right, so let's get that clear, he says. All right, let's put Allah aside now, right? In the sense of, okay, maybe Allah likes this. Maybe Allah needs this. No, it's for ourselves. فَقَسَمَ بَيْنَهُمْ. So He created us for ourselves, for our own pleasure and benefit in the hereafter. But we have to go through something which is called the dunya, so that we can reach certain pinnacles of greatness, of perfection, whatever you want to call it. So he says, فَقَسَمَ بَيْنَهُمْ مَعَايِشَهُمْ. He says, so He distributed amongst these people in the dunya their ma'ayish, their livelihood, their sustenance. وَوَضَعَهُمْ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا مَوَاضِعَهُمْ. So Allah distributed the rizq and sustenance amongst the people. Someone right here will say, wait a minute, but we don't all have equally. Some have more over others. So look at what he says right after he says this line. He distributed. And وَضَعَهُمْ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا مَوَاضِعَهُمْ. Put every person in the place that they're supposed to be in this life. One person is king, one person is slave. One person is inferior, one person is superior. One person is subordinate, one person is the boss, right? This is how it is. One person is a butcher, another person is a doctor, another person is an engineer, another person, and so on and so forth. Each person has a place that they end up in. Now, someone might say, that's not fair. I want to be a king, whatever. That's a different story. Why did Allah pick like this and that? That's a different story. That's not our job. That's Allah's job. Don't worry about that part. Some people say it's not fair. No, you know what's not fair? If this stuff affects our akhirah, that's not fair. But no, He has not taken free will from any of us. Whether I am the lowest of the low or the highest of the high, I have free will in the decisions I make in my life. And Allah will hold me accountable based on how I use that free will. Sometimes a king might make it to Jannah, a slave might not. For example, if the slave doesn't do what he's supposed to do when it comes to Allah's commands. Let's say that slave doesn't fast or pray on purpose. But if a king, for example, fasts and prays and is kind to his people and does everything he's supposed to do, he might have a very high rank, as a matter of fact. I don't need to say that usually the kings are oppressive, but anyway, I'm just theoretically speaking here right now. All right. So that shows that yes, He distributed things amongst us, but at the same time, we have to remember there won't be an equal amount for everyone. There's different things going on in this world. There is a lot in a natural, material world, brothers and sisters. And you know what? It's supposed to be like that, because in a world like this, it is that Allah can test each individual. and see how they do in different scenarios. Will they prefer Allah's will or their own will and their own desires? Yes. And so every day these little tests come up. The least is when we have to get up and pray. The least is when we have to fast in Ramadan. And there's other things as well that will come up. So he is making a very important point here, in my opinion, brothers and sisters. He starts with Allah. He says there was a purpose in creation for us because he doesn't need it. For us. If he doesn't need it, then it's for us. Then after that, he says that, look, we're in a place where each of us has its own place, has their own place and needs, right? And so on. Now, out of all the people of the world, there are some who will live up to and fulfill God's commands, and there are some who will not. The ones who live up to the commands of God, all right, the ones who live up to the commands of God, they are the ones who are the muttaqoon. So that's where the Imam says now. He says, so there are some in this world that is set up in such a way. There are some who will obey God, and there are some who will disobey God. This dunya that we're in, each of us has our own struggles, our own place. The king will have his struggles, the slave will have his struggles, brothers and sisters. There's a hadith I've heard from one of our teachers. I couldn't find it myself because I didn't really research it, but I'm just quoting him that Imam Ali said hardship in this dunya is divided equally amongst everybody. So each of us will have our share. Trust me. I'm pretty sure you've had this before too, these moments, and I'm sure, and I've had these moments myself where I've thought somebody was really doing good in life because it seems so. Everything seems to be clicking for them. But then when they come to you and speak to you about certain things, like, oh my God, I'd rather not be him and just be myself. You know what I'm saying? This is just the reality of this life. Now, this life that we're in, where we get hungry, we get thirsty, Allah wants to see, is he going to take the halal route or the haram route to satisfy his needs or her needs? There are some who will obey God. They are the muttaqoon. فَالْمُتَّقُونَ فِيهَا هُمْ أَهْلُ الْفَضَائِلِ. So the muttaqoon, the Imam says, they are the ones who have fada'il. They have certain virtues. They have certain descriptions and characteristics that I want to share with you now. These are their features. منطقهم الصواب ملبسهم الاقتصاد مشيهم التواضع. 3 things here that might not seem very important, but reflect something very important. What are they? Number one is, excuse me 1 second. Number one is that their mantiq is sawab. 2 things we need to talk about. What is mantiq? What is sawab? Mantiq comes from nutq. Nutq means to speak. Yes, mantiq is sometimes a word also that's used to denote logic. So if you say mantiq in Farsi, mantiq means logic. But it also originally means speech. It means speech. And so here he says, the Imam says, their speech is in accordance with sawab. Sawab with a sad should not be mistaken with sawab with a tha. Okay? In Urdu, in Farsi, and in Arabic, of course, we have this word, sawab. In Urdu, they'll say sawab. In Farsi, we'll say sawab. And in Arabic, they'll say thawab. This means rewards. But there's another word in the Arabic language with a sad, sawab, which means haq, which means truth. And so here it says their speech is in accordance with truth. Who is truth out there, brothers? Is Allah is the truth. The Quran is truth. Ahlul Bayt, Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam are truth. So this person is not saying here, Najul Balagha is not saying that when they speak, they don't lie. Some people think that that's what the khutbah is saying. When they speak, they don't lie. No, it's more than that. Anything that comes out of this mouth that you can put the name speech on it is in accordance with haqq and truth. In other words, no red lines are crossed with this tongue. So the first thing the Imam lists is one of the things that we are usually struggling with as communities out there. See, there are some good things to having a community and being in a community and center, and then there's some downsides as well. The good side of things is obvious, I don't need to get into that, but we have to be careful that such an opportunity doesn't turn into a threat. Why? Because the more the people that gather around together, the more they are prone of getting upset at each other sometimes, and then as a result speaking behind each other's backs. God forbid if we or if that happens. Inshallah, Allah protects us from that. Anyway, it says that their speech, when they talk, it's not backbiting. When they talk, it's not lying. When they talk, it's not hurting others' feelings, breaking people's hearts, and so on and so forth. منطقهم الصواب. Number one. Number two, مشيهم التواضع. ملبسهم الاقتصاد. Their dressing, when they dress moderately. They don't stand out. Now, yes, we have a ruling out there, some maraji' will have, about libasu shuhra. I don't want to get into that. This is not necessarily speaking about libasu shuhra. I don't want that to be misunderstood. All in all, this person knows for the bare minimum, they need, for example, 2 pairs of shoes. Okay, but that's not moderation, that's bare minimum. This person says, okay, throughout the year, I'll be going around, there's some gatherings I go to, I want to wear better shoes. Some gatherings I go that I, wear normal shoes. There's the chores I have to do outside, and so on and so forth. Okay? So I'll have shoes for that. Okay, 5 or 6 pairs makes sense for that. This is just an example. Someone might say, oh my God, Shaykh, that's too much. It's just an example, okay? This person won't go around buying 20, 30 pairs of shoes, 40, 50 pairs of shoes. Yeah? There are some people out there, they have collections of sneakers. Sneakers are supposed to be worn and used, not collected. Yes? All these hungry people in the world, and then the guy has a $2 million collection of sneakers. Subhanallah. May Allah accept. No, they dress moderately. It's average, above average, They don't stand out when they walk, you're like, oh my God, this guy, look at the way he's dressed or something. No, moderation. Mashyuhum at-tawadu, when they walk, it's not like they're turning heads or something, or they walk in a way that they own the place, or they walk as if, they're intimidating everybody. I'm better than you, and so on. Just the way they walk equals them saying, I'm better than everybody else. That's not how they are. When they walk with humility. And these are things that are also mentioned in the Quran as well. I think in Surah Luqman, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look it up real quick. Oh, excuse me. This is in Surah Isra, not Surah Luqman. I thought Luqman was telling his son these. It says, لا تمشي في الأرض مرحا إنك لن تخرق الأرض ولن تبلغ الجبال طولا. This is one of my favorite verses. It says, don't walk exultantly on the earth. Indeed, you will never pierce the earth nor reach the mountains in height. You're nothing. Who do you think you are? Like you're walking, on earth, and you're splitting the earth as you walk, as if you're something special. No, that was Goku and Vegeta. For those of you who remember that cartoon, yeah. Not for you and I, as if when we walk, the earth is trembling under us or something. Or I am so great that I'm as high as the mountains. Come on. The Quran is saying, come on. Who are you? لا تمشي في الأرض مرحا. The opposite of that is مشيهم التواضع. When they walk with humility. All right? Like you will find amongst, I just use the example of scholars here, but you don't have to be a scholar for this to necessarily happen even. There are people out there who aren't scholars, but they are also arifs. They're great people. And when they walk, you can't tell that what this guy is all about. But then you find out this person is like a great abid, a great devout worshipper of God. Or some of these ulama in Qom, when you walk, you can't tell. Then your friend hits you, is like, hey, You know who that is? I'm like, no. He's like, this is so and so. I'm like, oh my God, the great mujtahid. He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, then how come there's like no one after around him and he's carrying a bag of groceries? Because they're not about that life, brothers and sisters. They're not about making noise. That is exactly the opposite of the times we're living in today. Right now, it's all about making noise on social media. That's what it is. It's all about numbers. It's the number game. How many followers, how many likes, and all that kind of stuff. And for that, you have to seek more attention. You have to sometimes act and not be who you are. Take a selfie, act like you're all happy, but then right after the selfie, your face is back to normal, as if in the picture, when people look at it like, my God, this person is so happy on the inside. But then after your own selfie, you know, you're back to normal. There's nothing special going on. You know, that kind of thing. Am I against special selfies? No. Am I against social media? No. I'm not against these things. I'm saying these are the times we're in where these have become the measuring stick. That's the problem. The standard. That's the problem right now. When we say the standard, that means they are the ends. And since they're the ends, they will justify any means of getting there. Yes, even if it means doing things that you're not supposed to do, acting like you're somebody that you're not. This is exactly the opposite of mashyuhum wa tawadu'. You know, brothers and sisters, once again, I'm no one to judge, and I'm going to talk about myself first and foremost. For us, people that struggle with this, and we have kind of an ego, the reality of the matter is that our iman is still weak in our hearts. We've disobeyed God so much that God isn't that important in our eyes. Yes? And so, if God isn't that important, who's going to take his place? Myself, of course, first and foremost. Who cares about everybody else? First and foremost, myself, my ego. This is one of the reasons why obedience of Allah is so important. A person who continues obedience of Allah is, quote unquote, beating up their nafs, their self and desires, and practically telling their self, Allah is more important than you, or else I would listen to you instead of listening to Allah. This is like a golden line, I would say, brothers and sisters. A person who has, the more ego a person has, the more it shows that practically it seems they have not fought their nafs. The only time you prove to your nafs, to yourself, that Allah is greater is when you listen to Allah over your own self when it comes to the pleasures of life that are haram, right? So when this happens, a person will have ego, but on the opposite side now. The flip side also holds. The more Allah is in the heart, the more I've proven to myself that Allah is the most important through my actions and deeds, the less I will see myself, the less I will care about others thinking what they think of me, how they look at me. And it will even show itself and manifest in the way I walk outside even. I walk like a normal human being. Not like these pigeons that put their chest out, you know? Or any other thing out there that puts its chest out, you know, when it walks. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. Now some have said, the Imam here, why is he mentioning some of the things that aren't like very important, you know, when it comes to muttaqeen? Why is it that he mentions, for example, dressing moderately or walking humbly? He could have started the khutbah with something huge like Salat al-Layl, stuff like that, you know? But what comes to mind, brothers and sisters, is what I said in the beginning when I started this part of the khutbah. And that is that these characteristics, these three right here, especially the second and third one, I would say, and even the first one, they reflect something very, very significant. And that's what I just spoke about a couple minutes ago. The fact that Allah has become so great in their hearts that it's manifesting like this. Walking humbly in and of itself might not have too much value, but when it reflects how great Allah is in your heart and in your eyes, that's when it has a lot of value, because it shows that this person has really brought themselves down before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sees Allah more than others, and that's why he could care less about intimidating others, making a point, making noise when it comes to the way they walk, the way they dress. Person who dresses moderately is like, okay, we got the akhirah coming. Like, okay, let me just go by with some stuff and we're good. Versus the guy who will change an outfit every day. There's some of these NBA players, they change their outfit every single game when they're walking into the arena. And that's very sad. What kind of culture is this? That this NBA player who's making millions and millions, well, good for him. But he will proudly say, I don't wear the same outfit twice when I'm going to a game. Well, excuse me. I mean, first of all, they're going to take that off and wear the jersey when they're playing. So it's just for the entrance and exit from the arena and stadium, right? And so what he'll say, I don't wear the same outfit twice, and in every game I wear the different one. You know how many games are in an NBA season, brothers and sisters? Of course, this is pre-COVID pandemic. Post-COVID, there are no more games anymore. But pre-COVID, 82 games a year. 82, they call it regular season games per year these guys are playing. That means 82 expensive outfits that you are purchasing. And to get rid of that guilt that they themselves might have, because man, you're spending a lot on this. To get rid of that guilt, you know what they say? They say, after I wear it once, I give it away. I give it away to people who might need it. Well, excuse me. Don't you think it would be better to give that money to people rather than spend it on an outfit that you can donate later? We don't even know if that person is going to wear it, go sell it for like half the price or something, and so on. Like, what's going on here? Like, how are we fooling ourselves? How is shaitan having us run in circles? This is the prevalent culture, unfortunately, in this day and age that we're in. So the point I want to make is this: these people, they're like, God is watching. Like, who am I to make noise? Who am I to try to act all super special? They're dressed normally, they walk normally, just like everybody else. Yes, I do want to explain this though, that sometimes a person, their job is clothing, or for whatever other reason, they have to dress differently than others. This is not, as we go through this khutbah, brothers and sisters, we're not supposed to think that everything is black and white in the khutbah. We'll get to some other parts as well. When the imam even speaks about the physique, yes, of these individuals, what it looks like, there even we'll talk about how that's not a general statement that applies to everybody. We have to understand these matters as well. But that's the rule, that's the default for them. They dress moderately, unless another reason calls for them to dress like lavishly, if there is any case of that out there. Or they have to walk more arrogantly. Sometimes even our imams, I'm not going to use the word arrogant, of course, but sometimes our imams, most of the time they were humble servants of God, but sometimes they would speak out and let the people know who they are, right? The famous khutbah of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, when they tried to act like he's a nobody after Karbala, when they were prisoner. Yes, they said, who is this? Who are you? He says, I'm the one that the desert knows. I'm the one that is this. I'm the one that is that. I am the one, Mecca, Medina, the son of Mecca, Medina. All these types of things the Imam is saying. The Imam says, why? Someone might say, oh my God, why is he being arrogant? Astaghfirullah, that's not what it is. The situation calls for him to talk about his own merits. But usually, is Imam Sajjad, praising himself and talking about himself? No, not necessarily. The rule and default with him is he gets on with his life, just like a normal human being, is a humble individual. And here as well. So I want us to understand, we don't want to look at things black and white, but yes, we can figure out at least what the rule is, what the default is. And then we can try to be like that. And then if something comes up that calls for another way of acting, then we'll go by that. That is what is so cool about Islam, that Islam isn't black and white all the time. It will give you a primary rule for something, it'll give you a secondary ruling for something, and so on and so forth. You'll have that everywhere. Some rulings will override others. It depends on the situation, and so on and so forth. So inshallah, we keep that in mind as well. With that, I will end. And inshallah, I know we didn't go too far into the khutbah, but starting tomorrow night, inshallah, we'll go a little faster. Even if we go through about half of this khutbah, inshallah, I think the first half of it the Imam makes some very, very important, valuable points for us. Yeah, so this isn't like Dua Joshan Kabir that I'm going to try to necessarily zoom through all of it, okay? But rather, I'm going to try to get through the more important points as much as I can, inshallah, on these nights and on these days. Inshallah, Allah accepts our fast and keep us in your du'as. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Maulana, for informative speech. And this concludes our program for the day.